We were driving around this weird part of Las Vegas, and I said, "This is surreal." And he said, "I know, it's so real." I repeated, "Surreal," and he repeated, "So real." We were watching Django, and during the winter training montage, there is a moment where the camera pans over a herd of reindeer. At that moment, my ex said something about how she thought it was weird that they would include reindeer in the movie because it kind of breaks the immersion. I was confused and asked what she meant by that. She went on to explain to me how reindeer weren't real animals and just make-believe characters in a fairy tale, like Rudolph and the rest of Santa's reindeer. I asked him what event resulted in World War I. His response was September 11th. He was serious. When she flipped out because her third grader came home with the word erect on a spelling list and was on the verge of calling the school. She honestly had lived her entire life not knowing that that word had any other use aside from describing the state of a man's Johnson. I dated a guy for about a month until I found out that he didn't realize that women's chests made actual milk to feed their baby. He thought that describing the act of chest feeding was just a way to hold a baby while giving it a bottle. I told him he was an idiot, and he said with a disgusted sneer, "I didn't know that because I've never known any woman who had or would feed their child that way." I told him that I'd fed my son that way, and he called me a child mistreater. When she thought I was crazy for putting Pop-Tarts in a toaster. Or maybe it was the time she tried making Hamburger Helper for the first time at 27 years old and called me from the store to ask where they sold the brown hamburger meat. I can't believe I dated that. I'm wasting away to nothing. Send help. Oh, and I almost forgot the best part. She's teaching your children right now in an American public school. The first time I thought this was when he told my parents he was a meatitarian because he eats everything. The same guy told me that the bumps on the side of the highway are so blind drivers know when they've run off the road. High school boyfriends. He was hot though. Well, we've all dated the gorgeous idiot. Fun and games until your resentment at the sheer lack of mental activity going on also just makes you completely uninterested in doing anything else with them as well. I had been dating this girl for a few months, and it was Christmas time. We weren't super serious, but it was serious enough that I was buying her Christmas presents. I found something for her that was perfect, and it had a connection to some funny event involving her and my cat. So I made the present from the cat. I thought I was being cute and she'd make the connection. Instead, she got angry that my cat got her a present, and I didn't. I thought she was joking. To make matters worse, we were at her parents' place and they backed her up. It was extremely awkward and I realized it wasn't going to work out. The moon is so beautiful tonight. That's a street light. You know that, right? When I was helping her with geography homework and she couldn't point out our own country on the map. When she pointed up at a bluish star and sincerely asked, "Is that Earth?" When she surprised me by inviting her mother on our 16-day Hawaiian cruise. She got me Mad Libs, and when it was her turn to do a noun, she asked, "What's a noun?" I said, "It's a person, place, or thing." There was a long silence as she thought. It went on for so long that I thought she must be thinking of the best noun I'd ever heard. Then she said, "Place." Back in college, I saw a fleur-de-lis tattoo on a girl's butt for the first time. "What made you decide to get a fleur-de-lis tattoo on your butt?" "I don't know. I wanted something tribal." She told me with a straight face that our horoscopes had changed and it was a bad idea to be together. In high school, I was in an extracurricular program after school. There was one portion of it that was pretty much all girls. I dated one girl from this portion all throughout high school. I went to all of their events and helped out. I always wondered why none of the other girls or their parents really talked to me. Right before we graduated, I brought it up to her, and she told me that she told all of them that I was physically and verbally attacking her all the time. When I asked her why, she told me it was so no one else would steal me away from her. I broke up with her shortly after that. When I saw her water her plastic plant for the third time. I don't know, the first 2 times I was sort of stunned and curious. The second time she actually said, "The water just goes right through." I've had this one cactus for maybe 2 years now. It leaks, so I kinda never watered it. At this point, I don't know if it's artificial or organic, but I don't really want to break it to find out. So I just keep it by my other plants and I don't think about it. She kept trying to put food inside the rolling pin and then try to flatten it by just rolling it around. I'm trying to imagine a rolling pin constructed in a way where you could put food inside of it. I've got that classic solid wooden roller design in my mind, and that's all I can think of. Okay, so apparently lots of people here have rolling pins that are hollow, so you can fill them up with water to add weight. Apparently most of those versions are crappy plastic kinds. I frickin' swear to God I'm not making this up, but back in 2006 my ex-wife fell for the Nigerian prince scam and gave out our bank account number. A roommate of mine was dating this girl. Really cute, super sweet. We were all in the living room watching another roommate play Call of Duty World at War. It was still new at the time. She eventually asks if this was based on a true story. We reply that although the specific characters likely didn't exist, the game was based on World War II. Her response? What's World War II? Are you serious? It was World War fricking II. At one point she even said, it's not like everyone knows about it. Yeah, Casey, the whole world does know about it. It was a world war, and not the first one either, apparently. When he said the color orange didn't exist because it was really just pink and red mixed together. Was on a hike and was following a trail that I'd read up online. We got to a fork and I said, okay, now we need to go north. And she says, haven't we been going that way this whole time? Confused, I look at her and ask why she says that. And she replies, north is the direction in front of you, yeah? I'm still not entirely sure about the origins of that logic. We were 16 at the time and we went to go and do the deed. I realized I didn't have any protection and then she told me she didn't need it because I trust my body not to get pregnant. I asked her what she was talking about and she told me it takes conscious effort to become pregnant. And if she didn't want to be, she'd never conceive. How's she doing these days? 10 kids and living in a trailer? In my defense, this story was back in 2004. I found it charming and endearing that this guy did funny voices, made funny idiosyncratic jokes, and occasionally called me Milady. Then I saw Anchorman. Oh my god. He was literally doing a 24/7 Ron Burgundy impression, eclipsing his entire personality. I'm not sure that I ever really met the real him. Ah, the old imitate a fictional character because you have no real personality of your own trick. 0% of the time, it works every time. Why do people keep going to knife point? It sounds like people keep getting held up there. When we got into a legit argument over how many years there are in a decade. Baby, if you're reading this, there are only 10 years in a decade, not 12. That the past was black and white. She was dead serious. My mum used to come up with weird, deep answers to questions like this, which confused 5-year-old me a whole lot. When we were watching some documentary film with 1930s footage, I asked her, why was the world all grey back then? Her answer? Because the world was covered with the smoke of war. My ex of 4 years, when she considered it not cheating to do the deed with a woman because there's no eggplant on her. Girl, it's still cheating. I knew someone in high school who told a story about how once she was really nervous about getting pregnant. She wasn't, but when she finished her story, the teacher asked if she checked for transmissibles. Her reply was, oh, I'm on the pill. A girl I dated for 5 years thought Al-Qaeda was a lone dude named Al. And I convinced the same girl that Whoopi Goldberg was married to Gerard Depardieu. As in, her full name is Whoopi Doopy Doo. I told her a story about my childhood. 2 weeks later, she told it to me, but this time it was her childhood, apparently. She tried to argue that we could get to the moon easier if we just built a spaceship that could go underwater, and flew it through the ocean to the moon during the daytime rather than straight up. My God, someone get NASA on the phone. When she told me that babies could only happen if there was love, and the only way to get purgant from the unspeakable act was if you really loved the offender. He shot himself in the leg twice while cleaning his weapon. The same weapon, 2 weeks apart. First, he got himself in the calf, and then he took out his kneecap the second time. Same leg. Took months of surgeries to fix it. We were at a restaurant and she saw a picture of a buffalo and said, "I want to eat that pig." I was dying laughing. Probably one of the funniest people I've dated, but definitely wasn't too sharp. My ex thought that whenever I missed his call, the phone would still be ringing after it went to voicemail. I got at least 3 voicemails a week that consisted of silence and the odd, annoyed, impatient sigh. I showed my wife this thread and she reminded me that I used to think that yeast infections were a result of eating too much bread. Yeah. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. We were laying out under the stars and he asked why some were brighter and others dimmer. I told him that there were different sizes, brightnesses, and distances away. Confused silence. You mean they're not stuck up there? I'm lying there thinking that this can't be true. But oh, yes, it was. Upon further questioning, I found that he believed the night sky was a big dark blanket-like thing with stars stuck on it. The fact that our sun was a star also blew his mind, and just like our sun, other stars could have planets? Well, that was too much. I was crushed. I almost broke up with him there and then. But he was very earnest and wanted me to teach him, so I tried. 2 years and a whole lot of stupid later, we broke up. Okay, to expand. He worked with kids with special needs and did a really good job at that. He was well-meaning, pretty generally. He wanted to become the world's leading expert in autism. Fine, good for you. So I brought him along to my university library where he spent a day copying a textbook on autism line by line. I asked him how it was going and he said, "Great." Then he and I had a conversation where I told him that to be a world expert on it, it would take more than reading and copying books. It would involve research or being really involved in the field and gaining a formal education in it. After that one day in the library, he never went back. I didn't say he couldn't, he just lost interest. He did that a lot. He'd get super stoked on one subject, and the next day it would just be over. Forgotten. This happened with poker after he watched the movie Rounders. He lived with a bunch of guys. They all didn't like him, but he was completely oblivious to that fact. They asked me a lot why I was with him. Anyway, he set up a poker night immediately and then lost all of his money to him. He was already super poor, so he lost about $100, and I forbade him from getting loans to gamble more. Again, the next day, it was gone from his head. Same thing with free mountain climbing after we watched the Mission Impossible movie, where Tom Cruise scaled a rock face with no ropes. I told him he should try free skydiving instead. I was getting pretty sick of his crap by this point. He laughed and it was gone from his mind again. His big dream, and one that actually lasted the longest, was that he wanted to be a mortgage broker. His dad was one and was really successful. He just couldn't do the math though. He had to take a course and I tried to teach him the formulas, but he just couldn't do it. We were running through problems and then he turned to me with an exasperated look on his face. Why do the numbers keep changing? As in, why would the numbers change in a certain formula from one problem to another? This almost tied for the most stupid experience. The big blanket in the sky, but not knowing about space and the sun and general knowledge of how the Earth is situated in terms of our solar system just seemed a little more profoundly deficient to me. For all those asking, he did not have a sweet hog. He was not especially attractive. He was sweet and well-meaning sometimes, when he wanted to be, but he got more and more nasty and insecure as time went on. He controlled my every move by the end, and as I had low self-confidence, I felt like it was my fault, and that by being better, he would eventually treat me better. It did not work out that way. Things were going towards physical bullying, and I left. He stalked me a little bit afterwards. Through a natural move due to school, I took the opportunity to lay low and he left me alone, thankfully. It ended 15 years ago, and since then I've married and am very happy with his polar opposite, an extremely intelligent man with a sweet hog. Well, I'm glad that you got away from dummy and eventually met your well-endowed smarty pants man, author. I don't know how you take steps to fix the mental issues with your ex better than you were already trying to do. Was there any hope for him? Ah, well. She thought Scotland was its own island, as in separated by water. We live 30 minutes from the border of Scotland. Okay, to answer some of your questions, we live on the east coast of England, and some guy thought it was from someone outside of Europe. We've both lived in England our entire lives, which makes this even more shameful. When she tried to convince me that the Pacific Ocean was freshwater. He insisted that women cannot be doctors, only nurses, and vice versa. He said that the two are the exact same thing except one is male and one is female. He was in his early 20s. When she told me she had never been to France, I knew for a fact she went to Disneyland Paris every year. Paris isn't in France, she insisted. We live in the UK, not USA, or somewhere else. You can literally drive onto a train which takes you to France from our country. She told me her most common password was very secure because it was just a bunch of random numbers. The fact that those same numbers were also her social security number didn't seem to concern her. We were texting back and forth, and she said she was obsessed with Bon Jovi. And she spelt obsessed like upset, but with an S before the T. I realized it was a typo and asked why she was upset with Bon Jovi, and she said, "No, I love him. I'm obsessed with him." Watching a wildlife documentary, and my girlfriend asked me if bears laid eggs. We both live in the UK, and just this morning she messaged me asking if Theresa May was the Prime Minister. This was one of her more sensible questions, but really, she should know this. He thought the Nation of Islam was a place. When I explained to him that this was not the case, he responded with, agree to disagree. Oh wow, Halloween is on Friday the 13th this year. No, it's not. Is that an albino duck? That's a dove. When I told her that not every country celebrates 4th of July, or Thanksgiving. Luckily, she left me for a smackhead named Brad and told everyone that I finish quickly in the bedroom.